Well, hey, welcome to A Valid Answer with Scott and Marshall. Welcome back to our Monday, episode 3 of our Monday session. That's right. We have Marshall here, who is the socialist, liberal atheist. And of course, I'm Scott. I am the capitalist, conservative pastor. And what do we do here, Marshall?
Well, we talk about ideas. Basically, we talk about the ideas behind the politics and the philosophy behind all of it. And we point out the logical fallacies. And even though we can get into some pretty bitter disagreements, the cool part is we're still friends at the end of it all.
Yes, we are. We are still friends, and that's a big part of what we do is to understand if you're on opposite sides with a friend. Excuse me. If you're on opposite sides of a discussion, but you're on opposite sides as friends, then you treat the other person with respect, even though you disagree with what they're saying. And if we could all treat people with the same respect, even though we disagree, man, that would be a much, much better world. And that's what we're trying to help create.
You don't have to respect their bad beliefs.
No. You respect the person.
But
that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Absolutely.
You don't have to respect their beliefs, and you're going to challenge their beliefs, and and you can still think that, well, the belief in that belief is really dumb, but I don't think you're a dumb person.
Precisely.
That's the difference.
Because beliefs are not entitled to respect, but
people are. Yes.
Yeah.
So there we are. So today we're discussing some things that have happened in the news recently in a couple of states of some evil Republicans.
Those darn dirty Republicans, man. I'm telling you.
I'll call that out when it's time, but
they are off the hook. They are staging legislative coups in multiple states.
Is that a little bit of hyperbole?
No. I think if you are undermining the will of the electorate, if the electorate has removed your will to govern,
your will to govern.
If they've removed your mandate, if they have taken away your mandate, and then you go and you undo everything that they wanted, like rolling back minimum wage increases and things like that.
But while you're still in power, you still have the power to do that. You are still right, aren't you still?
Just because it's legal doesn't mean it's ethical.
But hold on. Why? Hold on. But why is it not ethical? I'm going to challenge you on this. They are within the term of the people who elected them.
Right.
Why is it suddenly now they can't do anything during that part, even though they're still part of their elected term? Why are you saying that's unethical?
Well, look at what Republicans did to Obama when he had over a year left in his term, but he nominated a Supreme Court justice and Republicans simply stalled. They filibustered his nominee and would not give him even so much as a hearing.
Yeah.
Merrick Garland.
I don't like that. But I'm asking you, why is that unethical?
Because they no longer have the mandate. The voters have themselves spoke very loud and clear that we want to change direction in these states.
But hold on. But still, that comes in a certain date. They're still within their term.
They're
still within their term.
Okay, then why not make these changes prior to entering the lame duck session? Why not make these changes prior to
Because they probably didn't know that they needed to.
Well, no, because I think they were afraid they would lose the election for sure if they imposed these changes. One of the problems with the way we do politics here in America is private interests, lobbyists, corporate influence, money has an outsized impact on how our politicians vote. Our politicians basically
I'm not going to disagree with you there, but I am going to bring to terms, because this is something you are complaining about legislators doing their job within their term and saying that that's unethical, saying that there is a mandate that the people have said this is what we want, and you're saying these people are going against the mandate, yet they are acting within their term that they were elected to. Doesn't that kind of undermine the very basis of what you're saying?
I can see that, but the problem is they are stripping powers away from incoming people who are coming in to take office. They're stripping powers away from governors, attorneys generals, and when they're literally changing the job description just because they lost the election, to me, that's sour grapes. That's not a reason to make a change. Why didn't you propose this change prior to the election? Why didn't you vote for this beforehand? Why are you waiting until now when you are on your way out, when you are being shown the door? Now you're doing this. It's almost like a poison pill, if you will. It's what it feels like. The bottom line is maybe I can't get away with condemning it in the terms that I've used, where I've said it's a legislative coup or it's unethical.
Because I'm going to call you out on your terms. I'm going to call you out on your terms.
Okay. Well, yeah, it's loaded language, right?
Exactly.
But
control the language, control the argument. We talked about that yesterday.
Last night.
Watch last night's episode
on political correctness. Is a great episode. But at the end of the day, it's still. It doesn't seem like fair play.
Oh,
it just doesn't feel like fair play.
It doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel like fair
dirty
play.
Politics.
It feels like dirty politics. Exactly. I believe it's sour grapes. I believe it's dirty politics. But I can't let you say that it's a coup. I can't stand, because that's using charged language. That's setting up a straw man. That's
okay. How would you describe it then?
Dirty politics.
Okay. And what's the difference between that and a coup? A coup is basically where you take power, illegally.
Right. They're not illegally taking it. They're making laws that are within their sessions, that they are still legislators and still doing their job. It's not illegally happening. They're not violating any laws. They're not overthrowing anything. I mean, it's literally not a coup. I'm not saying it's right, and I'm not saying I agree with it at all, but I'm saying it's not a political coup. It's not actually a power grab. That's outside of the legal limits of what they can do.
Okay, so
but again, just because legality doesn't always mean ethicality.
Do you oppose what these people are doing?
Yes.
Okay. All right, I think that's fair. Yeah. Okay, so that's strike one, Republicans. All right. So let's be fair,
From just a debating and just a art of debate and art of politics perspective, it's pretty clever what they did.
Well, I get that. I don't think it's that clever. I think it's just sour grapes as you go out the door.
Well, I mean, considering you say it's unprecedented, right?
Well, and it's not. So, like I was about to say, let's be fair and acknowledge that Democrats have done similar things in the past. Now, not on the scale that we are seeing it today, but as recently as 2016, Democrats in Congress, when they lost the midterms and Republicans were being ushered in, made a number of changes. They passed a number of things. They ended Don't Ask, Don't Tell. I think they signed on to a nuclear arms treaty, that wasn't necessarily going to be accepted by the Republicans who are coming in. So
it's basically getting all the stuff done that
they should have done before.
Yeah, everything that you procrastinated on, and now you realize you don't have enough time to do it. Now you're cramming for the test and doing it at the last minute.
But you've already failed, so that's the thing. But
good point.
But this is the thing: is we need to clean this stuff up. And so when we see that there are politicians who are participating in this, we need to make sure that if they happen to have been reelected this time, they're not going to be reelected the next time. And I think a better way to clean it up is to simply put a stop to it. End lame duck sessions.
Now, that would basically mean basically just once the election is over, there is no session. Sessions are over until
lock the door.
Yeah.
Lock the door until January or whenever it may be.
Because I haven't looked into it enough. What negative things would happen or what has happened where places have done that? You said that you had said that there are some places that have done that.
I don't know of any negative impacts per se. I know that historically lame duck sessions have involved specific issues. For example, there may be a plan prior even to the election that we will meet in a lame duck session to resolve an issue that's probably ongoing or something that needs legislative attention. But barring a good excuse like that, having open season on everything, in a lame duck session where you have people who are really no longer answerable to their constituents because they are lame ducks. I don't like that, And I think another way to do it is if you need to have a legislature in session, you really want to have these people seated right away, then seat them right away. As soon as the election results are certified, the new Congress or new representatives come in and immediately we go to work.
I think it's reasonable to give them a number of weeks at least, because they got to put together staff, they got to put together cabinet, they got to move, they got to get things out of offices, they got to do all that kind of stuff. I think it's reasonable to have a matter of weeks of saying, once you've been elected, now this is when you're in office. I don't think that moving immediately in, because I think there's going to be a lot of issues with that as far as like recounts and all kinds of stuff like that.
That's why after the results are certified, and then maybe you allow 2 weeks to
something like that, whatever the date is, stuff like that. But I think it's more important saying, let's not allow legislation to happen.
Yes.
So there is no session. Once the election is over, there is no session happening, so that the lame duck period is just done and gone and
I could agree to exceptions to that in the event of an emergency.
Right.
Like let's say
that would have to be clarified
and probably be put in the hands of the governor or a committee even or something, and I don't know what would constitute a legislative emergency, particularly at the state level where you would absolutely need the legislature to convene.
Yeah. I mean, there'd probably be stuff like, I
really can't think of anything that can't wait.
Well, probably like declaring of national disasters or anything like that.
But that's all executive branch.
That's all executive? Okay.
That's governor would, declare it and boom, the governor has the right to do that.
Yeah.
And so what do you do then?
But then also on national level. Is there stuff that the Congress would have to do? Declaration
of war.
And that's about it, right?
Things like that. There might be, a few things, but basically... and I think you could actually literally specify those things in a constitution or elsewhere.
Now, here's the thing. There's always, because these are the cleverest, sneakiest, slimiest people.
Yeah, tell me about it.
They're going to find loopholes around whatever rules you make. They can game the system. I mean, just so speaking of gaming the system, gerrymandering.
Yes.
Where did that come from?
Well,
I'm deferring to you more on this episode as the historian and stuff. I know what it is. I know that it's been going on for a long time on both sides. Mm-hmm. I love 2 years ago in 2016 when the news suddenly was like they discovered gerrymandering. Oh my gosh, Republican gerrymandering happening in these counties and these states to where they Trump won because of gerrymandering. I go, where have you been the last 30 years in California with gerrymandering done by the Democrats? No, it's not a new invention that happened by the Republicans 2 years ago. Gerrymandering has been going on for a long time. It needs to stop on both sides. But how did it start?
Well, I guess if I want to reach really, really far back, more than 2,000 years, I think, to the Roman Republic, prior to the Roman Empire, prior to, I think, 44 BC and Julius Caesar, Rome was actually a republic.
Mm-hmm. In name, no.
Well, it was a republic, and they had a lot of the issues that we see today, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
It's really compelling to look back at classical history and to see how the people in the classical world dealt with some of the same issues that we deal with literally this very day in our country. The Roman Republic had issues because they had an assembly that was intended to represent the common people. And there was issues with, how are the districts to be drawn, who will be represented and in what measure and all that. In the United States, I think it goes back to like 1812 or whatever, the first time that they acknowledged that a district was gerrymandered, and that was when the word kind of came up.
Well, I guess on one level, it was done in the Constitution when slaves were given a...
Well, and you're right. That's a debate. Just like today, there's a debate like over prisons.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a prison in your district, does that then count towards the number of people
population
in your district?
Right.
And then what are the implications of doing that?
Yeah.
In the United States,
is it population or is it voters? What do you think it should be? Should it be straight population or eligible voters?
Personally, I prefer eligible voters.
I would too.
But what happens if you have a population of, let's say the population is particularly youthful, or let's say you do have prisoners in your population? Or, I mean, all people need some kind of representation at some level, even children. Yes. There needs to be some kind of political voice and representation.
But again, those children are going to be represented by their parents. I mean, unless you're saying there are cities made of orphans, of thousands and thousands of orphans.
But what about a prison? How do you count prisoners?
You don't.
What do you do?
You don't. They cannot vote, so you don't count them until they come out of prison. They can vote. They've paid their. Well, they shouldn't.
In some places they can.
They shouldn't.
And it depends. It varies.
Whatever
it varies by state.
Right, and that's the thing is that it's you're in prison, you've violated the law, pay your debt to society, then be back in society. But while you're paying your debt and while you're in there, no, these are rights that you have lost because of how you acted against society. You have lost these rights temporarily until you pay your debt to society.
But why should they lose the right to political representation? Are they not human beings?
They are, but they violated the system.
Do they not
violated
also
the
have
system.
needs?
They have needs, and the system takes care of their needs. So
Well,
they violated the system.
I mean,
they
I don't
their
want to
rights.
digress into
Right, but they
prison
lost their
reform
rights
and all that.
Yeah, I will, and again, I will never stand on the idea of somebody saying, "Well, what about the rights of the prisoners?" Like, no, they're paying their debt to society for the rights that they violated of an innocent person. I don't care about the rights of the prisoner. They didn't care about the rights of the person they violated. So once they pay their debt to society, then they come back. I'm not going to hold that against them. They paid their debt. Okay, so what? So what? You're an ex-felon, ex-con, whatever it is. So what? That's your past. This is new. You're out. I'm not going to hold that against you. But while you're paying your debt to society, you've lost those privileges because you took privileges away from someone else.
Right.
That's a fair trade. That's a just trade.
Well, most of us, I think, can see that and would understand that, but I don't want to. I don't want to agree that it's cut and dry. I just don't want to digress into that. Maybe on a different show. So I believe it was in 1964. I actually have the case pulled up. It's the case of Reynolds versus Sims. 1964. It's a Supreme Court case, and basically the Supreme Court held that state Senate districts must have roughly equal populations based on the principle of one person, one vote. So it is for this reason why, and I imagine it also, the implication is it applies also to congressional races, races in the House, that the districts constantly have to be redrawn as population changes.
Yes.
So that ensures that you have sort of a fair number of people in each district. Each district should have the same number of voters. And if it's a rural district...
Senate, not necessarily for...
Well, that's the Supreme Court decision, but
right.
I imagine it would be extrapolated then to apply to a House
Because each House rep is supposed to represent the same amount of people?
Roughly.
But close to as close as you
Which
can.
Which means you're going to have a very large rural district.
So redrawing has to happen. So how do you allow redrawing without gerrymandering?
Well, there are solutions to that, which, basically find a nonpartisan committee, if you will, to draw the districts. But that's not always the case, because then who decides who gets to be on the committee? And right now, in most states, the process is extremely partisan. Mm-hmm. And so you literally end up with incredibly bizarre districts that don't even look anything like a district. They literally meander, if you will, all over the place. And so you literally have, instead of voters choosing their representatives, you have representatives choosing their voters through the process of gerrymandering. So I think we all agree it's a terrible thing.
How do we break it?
Well, because we have to redraw the districts.
Yeah. How do we break it?
So, I think that's an old question to which there is no real answer because, like you said, these people are going to game the system.
Yeah.
So if we say that the system is going to be this way, if we, for example, say it's going to be drawn on a geographical basis and we're never going to change it, that might help, but there's still going to be ways to abuse it.
But then you're also going to have, people who have less representation because geographically, how many squares you get to cut up the LA basin into to equal one square in the middle of the Central Valley.
Right. So the bottom line is,
and then what you end up having is 75 representatives from the LA basin and one person from the Central Valley.
Sure, exactly. So what you end up having to do is you have to continue to do the redistricting, but it needs to be independent and nonpartisan.
And how do we ensure that?
Well, I'm not entirely sure. You might have to have the judicial branch or something else happen. I honestly don't know. I don't know because how do you eliminate bias from any person's decision making? I guess we could do a random lottery, but then, who goes into the lottery? Mm-hmm. So, the problem is there's always going to be corruption. It's sometimes going to be subtle. In these cases, it's very blatant. In the gerrymandering cases, it's blatant. You literally have representatives choosing their voters rather than voters choosing the
So what it comes
representatives.
down to, if there was one solution that really solves almost all of these problems, I think we come down to it multiple times on this show, is term limits.
But that doesn't, I mean...
It solves a lot.
It turns... Yes, I agree that term limits
If there was
need to
if there was one thing that would positively affect government more than any other one thing.
But I don't think that's the panacea. Take a look at what Ocasio-Cortez remarked about just last week. She, being a freshman member of Congress, went to an orientation session, and it was a 3-day orientation, and it was put on by lobbyists, corporate lobbyists. Basically said, here's the rules of the game. Now, since when do you have corporate lobbyists preaching the rules of Congress to incoming elected members of Congress? That is a problem. And that is not something that has been discussed or shared with the American people before. She is getting accolades from across the political spectrum because she is the first person to point out, hey, guys, did you know this happens? Mm-hmm. You know, a 3-day orientation put on by lobbyists? Really? You know, so until you get the money out, you get rid of the lobbying. You know, I understand that there needs to be some way for people to petition their representatives.
Mm-hmm. But that's
so
what I'm
you
saying
can't
is that
ban lobbying per se, but you definitely need to get the money and the corruption out.
But again, and Josh says the same things. Money. Josh, no. Since the Republicans took over, no. So really, Josh, you're saying that there were no lobbyists giving orientations until Republicans took over? Come on.
Well, I don't know how far back the problem goes, but it goes
I'm sorry. So the Republican
I don't
lobbyists,
know where to put the blame.
Hold on, but the Republican lobbyists were giving her the orientation?
Well, I don't know that they were Republican, but they were corporate.
Right. Okay.
It's
So
big money.
it's not a Republican
Democrats
thing.
take big money too.
Yes, but when it comes to money, again, you have this complexity of how do you get money out, and how do you, because you cannot simply just say, okay, no more money. Mm-hmm. You can't, you know what I mean? Nobody can, you cannot simply say, okay, nobody can give money to anybody's campaign.
Why not? Why not?
So no individual could give money to a campaign.
No entity. Make all campaigns publicly funded. You're running, you have so much support in your district, you qualify. Now you're going to get a grant of cash, and how you spend that is up to you.
So the government provides you money for your campaign.
The people, the taxpayers, the voters.
But the government gives them money.
Yes.
The government gives the money for the campaign.
And you get so much airtime and everything else. You get this. This is your package. If you make the ballot.
Mm-hmm. How do you make the ballot?
You have to have so many signatures or so much support.
How do you get support? Can you take money before you're on the ballot? Can you get support and make advertising before you're on the ballot?
It doesn't matter because you won't be allowed to spend it on your campaign.
Right, but I'm just saying, so now money could still get you your name out so that you can get yourself on the ballot.
Well, that's the thing is you would have to do away with the whole, I'm trying to think of the name of a super PAC with the numbers for super PAC, the law, whatever. But you have to get rid of all the super PACs and all of this other stuff that spend money on behalf of political parties and candidates. Now, the problem is the Supreme Court has ruled that money is essentially speech. That was, I think, the Citizens United case. Mm-hmm. The Supreme Court issued what I think is a disastrous ruling for our republic, basically saying that money equals speech and we cannot outlaw private people spending their money to promote other politicians. And that's when the super PAC thing exploded, mm-hmm. and that's why we have now, this ad is not run by so-and-so campaign, but, it's the campaign to elect so-and-so.
Gotcha.
And you see that now on all these commercials. So it's not necessarily endorsed by the candidate, but they are promoting a specific candidate.
But then how are you going to, so if I was a multi-billionaire mm-hmm. and I wanted you to win this seat, I would go pay and make my own commercials and pay for the commercial time to say, elect Marshall. You're saying I would not be allowed to do that.
Well, thank you, Scott.
But you're saying I should not be allowed to do that.
Correct.
So it's not me giving you money. You are literally censoring my speech.
Yes.
That's against the Constitution.
I
So
understand that.
yeah, so that
But
that
right
is
now
that is
you
a
have
good
people using the Constitution to undermine the Constitution.
right, but still that the people again that's gaming the system. That's whatever you got to figure. But you're not gonna change. You can't take away my. Now I understand saying me giving you money for your campaign. I think I can see an argument being made that's not
outright bribery.
That's not necessarily speech of me giving, but to say, hey, I'm going to go out on my own. I'm going to go on my radio show. Okay, so let's say I have a radio show. Let's say I have a radio show and I happen to say, hey, this hour of the radio show, I'm going to talk about how great Marshall is and you should vote for him. Now you're going to shut down my radio show?
Well, maybe just the same way that as the FCC would regulate your speech on the air now. If you were to go into an expletive-laced tirade, you would be fined or penalized by the FCC for doing that. And so you would probably impose the same rules and restrictions.
On political speech.
Correct.
Literally a branch, you're saying a branch of the government should limit political speech.
In the context of a political election, yes.
So you don't believe in the First Amendment? Freedom of speech, freedom of press. So hold on. So now are you gonna hold that to the press as well? That the press cannot, that nobody in the press can make an anti-political statement? Are you gonna hold the press to this? Are you gonna hold the press to the same standard?
It's different if you're
it's
reporting
not different.
News.
No. Okay. So only in the news.
Do you
portion.
know the difference? Can you tell the difference between a news story and a political ad?
No, what I'm talking about is CNN. That's not all news. Fox News is not all news.
Well,
there is a news.
Lot of propaganda.
No. There is a news hour.
That up as well.
Hold on. No. There is a news hour where they're reporting the news, but the rest of the time, that's all opinion shows. That's all editorial. Are you going to apply those same rules to editorial? Are they not allowed to say certain political speech?
Yeah, I don't know how far we take this.
You can't. Once again, it's that slippery slope. Once you take that step and you set the precedence and say the government is going to limit your political speech. That's a huge violation of rights. Huge violation of rights.
Well, not if it's constitutional now, is it? If it's ruled constitutional.
But it already has. It has.
We already have limits on speech now in this country.
Yeah.
So we have limits, and those limits create, safety, for example, because, for example, you're not allowed to use fighting words. You're not allowed to shout fire in a crowded theater, do things that create a clear and present danger to other people. And it seems very clear to me that right now our republic has been hijacked by people who are very wealthy and who do not have your best interest or my best interest at heart. They're serving themselves.
Again, either way, I don't care about that right now in this discussion. I care about what the government has the right to make laws about.
Well, we the
censorship
people,
that the government is allowed.
Us, and we as the people have the power.
But I'm saying, where do you draw that line? You're saying I cannot pay for it would be wrong for me to pay for an ad to elect so-and-so. So if I already have a radio show, now you're telling me, no, I have to say, so what if I have a TV show that's fiction and I write a story that shows a person like you in a good light and a person like the opponent in a bad light? And it doesn't have their actual names. And now entertainment, are you going to limit entertainment? Are you going to put a limitation on that?
Well, I would be disinclined to go that far.
You're so gracious.
A line has to be drawn somewhere, and something has to be done.
It's called the First Amendment, and it shall not be infringed.
Okay, but right now it's literally legalized bribery. So what is more dangerous to a republic?
That's what I'm saying. Going back to
restriction on political speech in the context of a campaign,
that's why I'm saying
bribery.
That's what I'm saying. The biggest one thing you can do to take the most power away from government officials is term limits. Money is way too complicated to take away people's rights of speech and all things. But if you limit their terms, if you say you're in 2 terms, that's it. Every time somebody's coming in, somebody cannot maintain this money grabbing machine. It's constantly turning.
You want to bet?
It's gonna be much more difficult with term limits. It's the one thing that you by doing that, you're not violating anything. You're not stepping on anybody's rights. You're making one rule that cannot be gamed. It's very simple. Once you're elected to this position, you can only hold it for this many terms. Done. Your money isn't your speech; it just amplifies it. That's cool, and I understand that. That's why I don't believe, Josh, that handing somebody money and say I'm giving you this money to support you. I believe there's an argument to be made that shouldn't be allowed. But if I'm going to spend my own money to say my own thing, I don't think you have a right to tell me that I can't.
I like what Josh said. I think that's actually a great distinction, is your money isn't your speech. So you can certainly say whatever you wish to say on your own.
Yes.
But you cannot purchase amplification of your speech. So that would be consistent under the First Amendment.
So if I already had my own TV show, then it's fine, but I can't spend money to get my own TV show. That's ludicrous. Well, it's propping up people who are already rich. It's propping up people who have already invested. Well, they've already invested and they have the technology and they have the access. So it's okay for them to say it because they already have it. But if you want to spend your money and buy a television time or anything like that, nope, sorry, you can't.
So they're privileged. Maybe we do have to limit the actual speech itself in some fashion. But we have to do something. Otherwise, we're going to lose.
Term limits is the thing.
We're losing the whole. I think we do both. I don't think term limits is sufficient.
Okay, but I don't think it's sufficient either. But I think
you're getting money.
It's a single most.
You're going to get money to run your campaign. You're going to be given airtime in which to communicate your vision and your ideals and to answer questions. Mm-hmm. So we're going to give politicians their funding for their campaigns. There's no reason why they need a third party then to go out and hoard greater share of voice. Let's put a football game or something else on. Let's talk about something different during this particular time. That's when the political speech will occur. And then outside of that, no, we're going to talk about other things.
How can you limit kickbacks? Is there a way to do that, or is that always going to be gamed?
Can you give me an example of what you mean? Well,
just I know that this person supports me,
so I'm going to do them.
So I'm going to do them a favor once I'm in office. How do is there a way to get around that? Is there a way to stop that, or is that just something that's always going to be gamed?
Well, certainly I think the latter is the case, but that doesn't mean you should abide it. You know, it's another form of corruption, and I think when we detect it,
what I don't want to do is two negatives don't make a positive. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So what I don't like about what you're saying is like, well, this is negative happening, so now we're going to do this other negative thing to counter that. And it's like, well, but then you're stepping on rights. You're doing yes, but isn't what's happening bad enough? And isn't that bad enough that it justifies us stepping on people's rights? And it's like, well, no. If you're worried that this is stepping on people's rights, why is stepping on more people's rights the answer?
When people become corrupt, they need to be punished. Period.
But don't punish the innocent with it.
Well, I'm not proposing to punish anyone who's innocent. I think there should be due process. I think that if a politician is doing kickbacks or something, and if it's blatantly corrupt, if it can be proven in a court of law that you're engaged in corrupt behavior, yes.
Kind of like the high-speed rail.
I don't know that
Feinstein's husband owning one of the major companies that's doing the construction on building.
Okay, so obviously, if that's a case of political corruption, I agree that it should be prosecuted. I don't care that it's a Democrat. Mm-hmm. I don't care that I personally support the project. I don't like political corruption.
Good.
And I think he should be prosecuted if he is guilty of a crime in that case.
But is that a crime?
Well, it may not be, in which case maybe we need to change the laws to make that a crime. I don't think things like that should be happening. I think, government contracts should be handed out on a fair and equitable basis, probably a bid process or some other process by which it's handed out to qualified, providers, contractors, and that's that. I don't support political corruption. I don't care what side of the political spectrum you are on. I don't care if you are the most communist leftist on the planet. I don't care if your name is Karl Lenin Stalin, whatever it may be. If you are engaged in political corruption, I want you to be punished.
And if your name is Karl Lenin Stalin, you just shouldn't be elected at all anyway. So just by basis of your name. Yes, Josh, we all agree on prosecuting corruption. I do believe we all agree on prosecuting corruption. What we don't agree on is how to do that and protect free speech at the same time. Mm-hmm.
Well, I again,
because here I am as a person with some influence. We're on a radio show. We have our own podcast. It's potential,
political speech.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So at what point are you saying that somebody should come in and tell us, sorry, you can't have this discussion anymore? Should somebody be in the room as we're doing this to say, no, you can't say that?
Oh, that's a good idea, Scott. Wow. I'm kidding. I think that's a fair question, and it's one that we're going to have to answer as a society.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that certainly I would like
And
to
as a
think more
conservative, I
about.
believe the Constitution has already answered that.
Well, but the problem is if the Constitution, as it's written now and as it's interpreted at present,
Mm-hmm.
satisfied that, then we would not have the problem that we have today. Obviously, there is a loophole that is being exploited.
Mm-hmm.
We need to close that loophole. That doesn't mean we have to put the Constitution up for grabs. The Constitution may certainly do a wonderful job answering this, but there is a loophole somewhere
Mm-hmm.
that someone is, getting through, and we need to close that loophole. We need to find some way to fix that.
And we need to do it without stepping on the rights of the people at the same time.
I agree. But at the end of the day, we need to save the republic, even if that means
why is it worth saving?
Some limits.
Why
on
is the
speech.
republic worth saving if you're violating the people's rights with it?
Because we're not taking away everyone's speech. What we're doing is we're insulating the people from political corruption. So I'm not taking away your right to choose to do things that you want to do.
Yes,
I'm
you
not
are.
even
If I'm
saying
on this,
that you
yes,
can't
you are.
say
If I'm on this
certain
radio
things.
show right now and you're going to have somebody in here telling me what I can and cannot say, yes, you are taking
I'm not
away.
advocating for that. I am simply saying that we have to eliminate the political corruption, which
Again,
is where a person is spending money
it's
to
the same.
amplify
It's the same thing.
speech
It's the same thing.
on behalf of a candidate.
progressive typically says we have to do something. We have to do something. No, you have to do the right thing. Don't just do
I agree,
something.
but we disagree on what the right thing is going to be.
Right. So,
I'm telling
and here's
you right
the thing.
now, I
and
don't
you're
know.
willing just to do something,
I don't know what the solution is.
but you're willing to do something even though you don't know.
No, I'm not giving a blank check to solve this problem, but I am saying we need to solve the problem. And we may have to impose some kind of a restriction with specific regards. It would be a narrow restriction. It would be a narrow, tailored restriction. But that's probably where we're going to have to go with this. Now, if there is another way to do it, I'm all ears. But we're going to have to do something. The status quo cannot persist.
All right. So that's political corruption. Political is on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
Been happening for a long time. What we've discovered is it's unfortunate we really can't do anything about it right now.
Well, I don't know why we can't.
Is that, well, I mean, again, let's fix gerrymandering. How do we do it? We don't know. Let's fix taking money out. How do we do it? We don't know. Let's fix
Well, we have to commit ourselves to solving these problems rather than fighting perpetual wars, rather than arguing over silly things like, are we going to build a wall or not? Or we need to deploy the military, And
Hey, Josh,
and all
real
of these
quick,
other
what's
things.
the straw man? I'm not sure what you're referring to. You said that's the straw man in big government. I'm not sure what you're referring to. So keep going. Sorry. Giving you a chance to post.
I think Josh is trying to argue that one of us has made a fallacy.
Right, but I don't know. I want to know what part he's talking about. I'm
may
not sure.
follow up.
Yeah.
But specifically, I think we have to devote political attention to the real problems that we face. There's a lot of distractions out there. In fact, the news is a master of misdirection. And there's a lot of misdirection taking place. You have people arguing over things that really aren't issues. I would imagine
Just
even
keeping
the whole,
everybody distracted.
Precisely.
Yep.
There's a lot of that going on, and there's a lot of talk about sports ball and all of this other stuff, and reality TV is going on.
You didn't see that play that Miami did this weekend?
I actually did see the play. It was like a flea flicker or something, right? Where he handed the ball back. The receiver caught the ball.
Yeah, it's called lateral. Yeah.
Yes.
There was like two laterals, and they just ran circles around. Yeah.
I've got to say, I did see that, and that was incredibly impressive. But nonetheless, rather than talk about that, we need people to come and talk about the same ideas.
Okay.
And to have the debates and discussions like
He's
Scott
saying the
and I are
straw man
having.
is saying that the left wants ever expanding government for the sake of government. I'm not sure either of us said that, but
Well, you were saying that the left wants to, or that progressives want to do something even if it's not the right thing.
yes.
That could be because
Maybe that's what he's talking
you
about.
are speaking, you are generalizing and speaking for a general group. You're characterizing them.
Yeah.
And I do agree that is a straw man, but
The stereotype fits.
I don't know about that. That's a hasty generalization.
That is a hasty generalization.
Again, you're making fallacies here.
Yeah, but that's an obvious one of when tell me what do you hear the most after there's a gun shooting? What does somebody come up and say? We have to do.
But that doesn't.
What do they
mean-
say? We have to
that
do.
doesn't mean
Finish the sentence. We have to do
something.
exactly.
Right.
They don't care what it is, and the
I
people
disagree with
no,
you.
no, because
on that.
because the solutions that are offered by the side that says that don't solve anything. They
Well,
are. They are.
What's your solution? More guns?
The solution is change people.
Okay.
So
How do we do that?
That's what I do.
How do we do that, though?
Come to church.
Do we
Come to church.
force them with these same guns to go to church? How
No.
do you do it? You know,
You make a better decision for yourself.
Well, then obviously, if that worked, because they're not prohibited from making those decisions now,
I know.
right?
But I'm just saying. I don't like the idea of people saying we have to do something. That causes more problems than it solves.
I don't like throwing out non-solutions as solutions either.
Yeah, and that's what happens when they say let's do something. Somebody comes up with a non-solution and says, "Look, I did something. Vote for me."
Wow.
And it's just more stupid political crap.
Well, I think,
And then the innocent people who aren't doing anything wrong are punished because now all these things are taken away, things are banned, all this kind of stuff because somebody did something. I'm tired of doing something. Don't just act until you have looked it all through. Don't just act until it is the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that requires research, and that requires attention, and it requires the electorate to be informed so they can support candidates and proposals that actually do the right thing. And that means more time discussing ideas,
like we're doing,
and less time on the sports ball and other things.
Although it is
people talk
entertaining
about.
sometimes.
It is entertaining, and there's nothing wrong with enjoying a game or having leisure time. There's nothing wrong with that. But there are real issues confronting the people of this planet and of this nation. And the time that we devote to idle pursuits and distractions, and then when we do spend our time engaged with political issues, it's straw man arguments.
Although I really have been enjoying playing Golf Clash.
Well, there you go. So, and there's nothing wrong with that. And, you know, I mean, certainly, Scott, you're politically engaged and you're very interested in doing the right thing. Mm-hmm. So you do devote brain power to what is the right thing to do. And you care about, logic
when people don't
and
do
philosophy.
The right thing. Yeah.
And there's too many people out there who are politically engaged, but they're politically engaged at a superficial level. Everything that the Democrats and the people on the left do or propose is evil, it's wrong, it's socialism, it's communism. Mm-hmm. Whereas, conversely, everything the people on the right do is fascism.
Yeah.
And we both know people on both sides of the political spectrum, they are engaged very superficially with the ideas. And they're not actually engaged with, what happens when these ideas clash? Because that's a really good thing from our show today. Yeah. Because we both agree that something has to be done about...
We're both surprisingly in a lot of agreement, but yet still in a lot of disagreement.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But that's what has to happen if we're going to make any kind of progress.
So, guys, we need to stop surfing. We all need to get into a submarine. Like we're just riding on the surface.
That's a great analogy.
We need to just get in a submarine and go
dive
in because there's something that happens when you get into a submarine. Now the wind, the waves, all that stuff that throws everybody off on the surface doesn't affect you.
What a cool analogy.
Boom. Wait, can I drop the mic? Hold on. Let me.
No.
I'm not going to drop the mic.
Too expensive.
But yeah,
we can't afford that yet. We're making $0 on this podcast.
That's the thing in the industry, in the sound industry, is that anybody who's ever dropped a mic has never had to actually buy one before. Otherwise, they wouldn't be dropping it.
But you can sponsor our show.
That's right.
And then
Currentcast.com, there's a sponsor page. Sponsor us, and we'll put your logos everywhere. And we'll basically just cover up the whole screen. It'll be flashing. I love that line from...
Hey, we'll work something out. We
were watching that movie, Ready Player One. I don't know if you saw that or not.
I have not.
But basically, it's about society in the future where everybody goes into the virtual reality. And one of the corporate guys is saying, our research has shown that we can fill up 80% of the viewer's viewfinder before inducing seizures.
My gosh.
And that was the measurement of this is how far we could go.
Wow.
And yeah, we could do that. We could put advertising. No, we're not going to do it like that. We're not going to go that far. But yes, you can sponsor us, currentcast.com. There's a page there. But until next time, we're on Sundays at 5, Mondays at 4, and who knows what might be coming in the future. We might be taking over the world with your help. So engage in those conversations like Josh does, and Josh has been following us for a while.
I love Josh. Yeah. I'm thinking we're going to have to put a phone out and put our number out. I want to pitch this to you and let people call in.
Oh, it can't be my number or your number. It's going to have to be like a we'll buy a burner phone or something like that.
I'll put my number out there.
No,
I'm not worried. I don't know if they'll get through. I pretty much whitelist
Yeah.
You can't call me unless you're on my whitelist, pretty much.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. Maybe we'll do that. But until next time, Sundays at 5, Mondays at 4. We'll catch you on the flip side. Until next time, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Bye.